Simpsons Index, an online spreadsheet that is also a podcast. This is the podcast.
Coming to you from SideQuest Studios, this is the Simpsons Index, episode 251. Hello out there, I'm your host, Elliot Jay O'Neill, and I'm joined by a returning champion, Steve Guntli.
Hello, I'm glad to be back. Good to see you.
And for first-time contender, J-Ban.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us for the Simpsons Index. We review Simpsons. And of course, long-time listeners will remember Steve Guntli from Ultra 64 and Wii Universe, but you've reincarnated, you've reinvented in a new podcast form.
What are you doing these phoenix days? From the ashes, yes. I am rising again, yes. Absolutely, yeah. J-Ban and I are actually 2/3 of the hosting team with our friend Justin Wilhelm for Cinemarcade, where we are watching movies and then playing the video games based on them, and then comparing, contrasting, and learning how they enhance or detract from each other. It's been a pretty fun little journey.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's just been some absolute class. Like I was just saying to you before on the pod, because of course I've been listening to it, and just the amount of times that I go, there was a tie-in game to that? Like, Who Framed Roger Rabbits and toys and, like, there was a game for these things?
J-Ban, I imagine you hear that a lot too, right? Like, you get that response, and like, what are you covering next? There's a game for that?
I definitely get that response a lot, and it's also this, like, morbid curiosity about how bad the game is. And so I love it when we find good games. Like, recently we did Addams Family, and I'm, like, for the Super Nintendo, and Steve will attest to this, I fell in love with that game. I feel like it's like the bee's knees, and it's just so much fun to play.
Yeah, you vibed with that one. Yeah, it was great.
But turning to you, J-Ban, first time on the show, we like to ask our first-time guests, so what is your Simpsons history? Where did the show begin with you? Where did it all begin?
So I'm a millennial, so I grew up on The Simpsons, and I feel like like the classic, the first 10 seasons of The Simpsons are burnt into my bones, as though it was mother's milk. And it's just like the classic episodes are just like in me. And then when I moved abroad, I lived in Scotland for 7 years. I stopped watching The Simpsons. I don't know why. It was just, I didn't want to pay for a TV license at the time. And I also was incompetent with other forms of media situations. So I just ended up not watching.
Thieving.
Well, because that's the flip side. We like to ask, where did the show end with you? Assuming you're not still. Are you keeping up with new episodes at the moment, or?
I'm not keeping up with new episodes of The Simpsons. I just don't know how to go back into it. I feel like I almost went back to it during the pandemic because I was like, I could catch up on 10 years of The Simpsons. And instead I ended up doing Family Guy, which I don't think was the smart decision, but it was a decision.
No, I still chuck it on sometimes just for I just need to not think about the thing that I'm watching, but then I end up getting kind of mad at it anyway, but whatever.
That's what it's good for. It's sort of like American Dad is very sort of soothing and but a Family Guy always makes me mad. And I'm like, why am I making myself watch this when it just fills me with rage? And but it does make me chuckle a little, so.
Yeah, that's it. There's always one or two gags that can get over the line there. But I'm glad to introduce you to the world of New Simpsons, and let's crack into it. See if this is one worth visiting for the people out there. So this was Season 34, Episode 10, Game Done Changed. First released in December of 2022, it was directed by Timothy Bailey, not to be confused with the Australian weatherman of the same name, and written by Ryan Coe. In this episode, Bart discovers an exploit where he can make money in a Roblox-like game and gets Principal Skinner in on it, and in the sort of half of a B story, Marge discovers that through this game she can communicate with Maggie. Hey, what do you guys think?
Oh boy, I have to tell you, I found this episode profoundly depressing in ways that I was really not anticipating, which we can go into in more detail in a second, but I'm curious if J-Ban had a similar reaction.
I don't know. I found there's elements that I really, so for me, and like obviously like with the cinema arcade, gaming is a big part of like living and life, and what we love
Mm.
about like existence is games. And so I feel like there are parts of this episode that really do showcase like you can really commune with your family members or your friends with gaming. And so I like those little snippets of sunshine. It's so beautiful that you can communicate with Maggie, you know what I mean?
Mm.
But then also as a theater kid, poor Principal Skinner's like
The magnet school.
dream of a magnet art school, you know, it's just like that is really depressing. Like, because he's like Dear Evan Hansen, like all like Angels in America, like all these theater references, and it's just like it's so sad to see that he's not going to get his dream, and it's just it's ripped from his hands. But yeah, I have other things to say, but you guys go.
Yeah, well, I think, to give this episode the best, and, what sort of stands out to me from this episode is I think the Roblox animation is very well done. I think just in a bubble, that animation looks very good. And, we've seen it before. I don't know if you guys have seen, but they did like a Lego episode as well that also looked really good, even though the story was pretty hollow, and we sort of get the sort of same thing here. I feel like they're kind of trying a little bit harder than most modern Simpsons episodes, certainly. But yeah, what did you guys think of the, like, because that's the other thing. I don't have any experience with Roblox, and like, I tried to find an episode that, it pertained to gaming somewhat, and then I was like, oh, there's theater in here as well. I know that, at least pertains to Steve a bit. Glad to hear that it's something that clicked with you as well, J-Ban. But yeah, how was, do you guys have any relationship with Roblox, or?
I have zero, and that's really part of the thing that unexpectedly sort of like gutted me with this episode. I remember very distinctly, I think it's a season 7 episode where it's Marge Be Not Proud, where Bart steals a cartridge of a video game, and it's kind of the first reference to video games that they had on the show. This would have been like 94, 95. And I remember being so excited seeing that as a kid because they depicted Sonic the Hedgehog and Donkey Kong and things like that. And I'm like, oh my God, my culture has caught up to The Simpsons. The Simpsons are reporting on things that matter to me. And for years, when they would drop video game references, it was as baby boomers who kind of knew them because they watched their kids play it or something. So it was always kind of like passing references. As the show went on and the writing staff got younger, it became people who grew up with video games. So they became a little bit more astute, and video gaming started becoming more and more part of the show. Now, season 34... the writers are now the kids of the people who grew up with video games. And it makes me feel profoundly old. Like, I really don't feel my age very often. Like, honestly, like, I don't feel like I am my age a lot of the time. But having this new episode of The Simpsons where the cast all sounds incredibly elderly and very tired, and they're discussing trends that that have completely gone past me, I found it very stressful. I don't know why.
How about you, J-Ban? Big Roblox fan, or?
No, but like obviously, like I understand intellectually about these games. I've heard about these types of games, and it's such a, like Steve said, it made me feel my age, and it's also it makes me curious about like the youth of today. Like, so I run a family, like all ages show where there are children in the cast, and they'll make jokes about like somebody made a joke about, oh, let's find a payphone, and they're like, what is that? And you're just like, ouch, these people were born in 2010 or later. So I don't mind seeing an episode about a video game that I've never played and I've never had that much of an interest in playing. What I do think it's interesting is that instead of having fun with the game, they use it to do some sort of capitalistic endeavor, which I thought was funny because like, I remember Bart being like scheming, but like scheming to have fun, and this is like scheming to get money. And I'm just like, what is Bart, like what's Bart getting out of this, other than just being the leader of a criminal enterprise, or like having a helicopter with a hot tub that he can moon the populace.
That I did like. I like that imagery of the worst possible place to have a hot tub.
Yeah, and with your Patreon box, you can make that dream possible for me, but we'll get to that later.
I actually really liked the opening of this episode, where they were having Bart play with VR, and it was clearly like an Assassin's Creed, and he's like learning the history, the ecumenical history of the Catholic Church through this video game. And and obviously swearing, like all young children do. Like, I don't know if you've ever played Call of Duty online. But it's nothing but swearing children, and I felt like that was the part that I sort of like. I was like, yeah, that's the itchy part of gaming today, is like you can have a lot of fun, and you can learn a lot, but is it good for children? I don't know. Like, I grew up on violent video games, and I would say I'm fine.
But I did see you steal a car earlier today and then, like, lead the police on a long chase. So, I don't know. That maybe wasn't the best. Yeah.
Well, it's too bad Justin's not here, because Justin grew up on Scarface, the video game, which is a GTA knockoff.
Justin's a little younger than us, and like he doesn't have quite the same cultural references, but yeah, he grew up playing the Scarface video game and has a lot of experience with that, and it's just like yeah. I appreciated that opening too. Like, although it was jarring to realize that are the Simpsons just not doing couch gags anymore? Has that stopped entirely?
It's a weird trend, because one of the things here we noticed in like the 20s of the Simpsons seasons, it's weird to talk about the Simpsons seasons than that wide of a fucking net, but yeah, during the 20s, their 20s, it would often be these long, elaborate couch gags, which would often go for like 2 to 4 minutes and like take up a decent chunk of the episode, and then they'd like fly through the rest of the episode. And because
that became kind of like the viral thing for the Simpsons for a little bit. They would get Guillermo del Toro to direct like the couch gag or something like that, or they would have some kind of elaborate animation, and that would just be the thing that they would put out on YouTube to get people to watch the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, the episodes, we noticed would suffer because of it. It was just like, you had a really good idea here, but you had not enough time to flesh out the plot. And now we find it sort of gone so far the other way that, most of the episodes from the 30s will just open up The Simpsons straight in. And then... But then the episodes will feel like really padded out, and I think there's a bit of that going on in this episode. I don't know. I think in comparison, this one moved at a bit of a clip for me, because so many of the season 30 episodes sort of feel like an idea like too far stretched out or just sort of padded unnecessarily. Just sort of kicking off the question here. Steve, we'll start with you. For better or worse, what's a moment from this episode that stood out to you?
So I do agree with J-Ban. I like the Maggie communicating with Marge bit. And I like that there wasn't like some kind of ironic like stinger on the end of that. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of a disturbing image at the end of the episode of how far down the rabbit hole they've let themselves go. But I do like that it's just like, oh, this is just a sweet thing where they get to communicate with each other for the first time, and like Homer learns that his daughter loves him, and that was a funny bit where he just said, 1 out of my 3 kids loves me, Marge was being very sweet about that. So I think that's a standout moment for me.
How about you, J-Ban? What stands out to you for better or worse?
For better or worse, I think I've talked about a couple of the things that I really liked. And I just like the overwhelming despair of Principal Skinner, just him trying, and like this Montessori school with this girl with a pet chicken, and I'm all like, and Drake doing like and just like the commentary on modern parenting, because parenting has changed so much in the last 34 years, but now people are paying to go to this fancy school, and they also do unpaid labor. They have like these glorious, like loving situations where everyone works together to raise children. And it's so different from like the stereotypical public school that Bart goes to. And there's just something really sad when they're walking through Bart's school and everything is like there's snakes coming out of the vents. The teachers are like warming themselves over an open fire. And it's just like, it's a little bit of like, oh my God, it's just like the rags versus the riches of the situation is just like,
I did like the end where the little girl just fired her teacher because it's like a student set curriculum. So I like that they followed that logical thread to like, oh yeah, she has hiring and firing power over the teachers. That was a pretty funny jab.
And yeah, my brother sends his kids to a Montessori school as well, so there were a few jabs there that I quite enjoyed because, yeah, I've heard him complaining about, yeah, we pay so much for this thing. Why do we then have to go work at that? Like, yeah, I'm definitely going to send that chunk of the episode to him. But yeah, the other thing we like to talk about on the Simpsons Index is, you know, the old episodes we felt like are held up by the two pillars of the Simpsons, you know, both the wackiness and the heart. And, you know, the great classic episodes had a great balance of that. So yeah, starting out, how was this episode in terms of like wackiness? How did they use the cartoon space?
I feel like they really, it was kind of surprisingly light on jokes. Like this whole episode was kind of presented very matter-of-factly. They're doing like this extended parody of The Wire without like really fully committing to it. Like there is this whole Wire thing going on with it. There were a lot of moments where I'm just like, why wasn't that punchier? Why wasn't there a joke here? Like they have a line where like, I don't know, something about cornflakes, and then Bart's answer is just like, and you know what? Cornflakes is a pretty good cereal. Yeah. And I'm just like, that's the punchiest thing they could come up with. That's the funniest thing they could say. Like, I mean, cornflakes were invented as a means of stopping people from masturbating. You can't jump onto something with that. Like, there's not anything that you can use.
Is that right?
Like, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Oh my God.
You know, it just felt like there were a lot of joke opportunities that they kind of left dangling. Like the hard element is here. You know, we have very clear like wants from Skinner. We have very clear like communication between Marge and Homer and the baby, like in the Roblox game. You know, there's a lot of heart in this episode, but I think they kind of forgot to make this one funny.
Well, yeah, in terms of like the production as well, so like, yeah, in the cartoony space, yeah, throwing to the theater kids here. What did you guys think of Skinner's song through this?
I liked it. I liked yeah, I did. And I also think that going back to that question that you asked Steve, it's just, I feel like they sort of like went 2/3 or through a joke and then stopped, especially with the visual gags and the roadblocks sort of things. I felt like that they were like, oh my gosh, roadblocks, we're doing silly animation. And they really could have nailed, like, I do like the parts where, like, you know, they were shivved by a peppermint candy cane. And I thought the wackiest part was sort of the most jarring part where they were doing YouTube commentary. And I was like, I thought that was a very charming update to The Simpsons. So I feel like that part really stuck out in terms of comedy in the show was that little section, because it felt like they were doing, you know, a joke every 10 seconds as opposed to the rest of the episode, or like it felt like the jokes were really spaced out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one actually felt weirdly on point because, yeah, often when Simpsons comment on these things is like, because this is something I did find refreshing on this episode. It felt like, yeah, Roblox was an integral part and they kind of understood it and they got it and they were able to explain it to the audience in a way that I think most people could understand. And sort of, yeah, what you're hitting on, J-Ban, with the YouTube video, sort of the same thing. I feel like they get the appeal of these videos and they were able to make jokes around how these things are edited and then the presentation as well of the hosts there. Even though they weren't familiar characters, it was like, okay, I get these people instantly.
Yeah. I liked, with the song, I liked all the theater references they were dropping. I like the kind of running bit about how Skinner wants to build this whole magnet school just to attract a Josh Gad, or like to produce a Josh Gad out of their school. But yeah. Man, Harry Shearer is phoning these in so bad. I mean, I know the man is 80 years old now, and he's hated the show for 34 years. But he is just not putting anything into any of these line readings. That like the song is all this really monotone. Like I feel like Dan Castellaneta like has not really lost a step. I feel like he's still putting full energy and full voice into Homer Simpson, but Harry Shearer is phoning it in so hard here, and it makes me sad because he's so good.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's literally phoning it in as well. I think for the last 10 or 15 years, he's been living in London and just, literally phoning in his performances. But
yeah, he doesn't do table reads. Yeah, he doesn't do any of that.
Yeah, but when you've got a song like this, like a literal I Want song, and not feeling any passion behind him because... Yeah, I think, production-wise, it looked nice. I liked the side inside his imagination. And even with the reprise at the end where you think it's real and then, it turns out he's still imagining it. Yeah, I thought that all looked very good.
Yeah. I mean, they're dropping all these contemporary theater references in The Simpsons, which I think is, again, scratching a nice little nerd itch for me, similar to when I first, saw the video game references. I'm like, oh, okay, I get these.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to think if Simpsons had done that much in the theater space. I guess... Streetcar Named Marge a bit. And...
Yeah, they did that whole Evita parody with Lisa running for president, which is an episode I like. Yeah.
Yeah. So how about the heart in this one? Did you guys feel the emotional moments?
I think the emotional moment was sort of undercut by the social commentary moment at the end when Ned is coming in. Because they are connecting as a family within the game, but then Ned comes in and they all Maggie hasn't been changed for days. Oof. And there's this neglect, and it's just and so the heart is oh, initially it's such a warming moment to see them love each other inside this game, and then to be oh no, it's undercut for me, the emotional heart, by the social commentary.
Yeah, that one really bugged me because it was you had such a great premise to start with that, Maggie is finally communicating, but you did nothing with it. It was just left at that little joke at the end where, Flanders, walks away, creeped out by the situation, and there was nothing more to that story, where it started out so nice and so sweet.
Maggie's overflowing diaper really hit me in the wrong way, because that's just a literal child abuse situation. That's ooh boy, okay.
Yeah.
But I did feel I've said it again, but the moments in the game with Marge and Maggie communicating in particular were really sweet. And I was definitely feeling very choked up. And I don't want to keep harping on this, but I am jumping back into the newer seasons after I don't think I've watched in 3 or 4 years. Julie Kavner, while I think her performances have gotten only better as Marge over time. I think she's putting more heart and more emotion into all of her performances. I really feel for her voice, because it sounds like she is really kind of struggling to get this voice out anymore.
Yeah.
And it can't be an easy one to be doing for close to 40 years. It cannot be an easy voice to have to affect for that long, even with her naturally kind of gravelly voice.
Sort of to go back to the emotional heart, I wanted to say this before we moved on. It's I really feel Bart was also very sweet in this episode. Bart was surprisingly nurturing to the principal, and it was he was actually encouraging, and him stopping the bulldozing of the thing was there's moments of actual sincere compassion for the principal, which I was I don't that's not my Bart, that's not the Bart I grew up with, but it's interesting to see, because it reminds me of Bob's Burgers, of how they'll have Louise do these turns of compassion, and so it was interesting to see Bart do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even though the consistency from episode to episode is all over the place, obviously after all this time, there is a lived relationship between Bart and Skinner at this point. It's adversarial, but it's also mutual respect, and so that you do get a nice sense of that, and that history that those two have.
Yeah, and it's a bending of their relationship as well, where it's, we're almost seeing Skinner do the Bart now, and Bart having to be the responsible one and step up. And it's sort of nice, it doesn't feel out of character.
No.
And leading perfectly into the next question, did it feel like an episode of The Simpsons? Are these the characters we know and love? Is this the show we know and love?
This, honestly, no. I mean, Again, it hurts me that the show has been allowed to go on this long, because It was this perfect specimen for like the longest time. You know, it was the show with just this absolutely incredible run. And now it's become kind of this weird social experiment, you know, where we're seeing what happens to a piece of art when you just let it keep going, you know, where it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And you hold on to the cast members as long as you can possibly hold on to them. And I feel like so much of the energy has just been sort of sapped out of this show. I think it looks better than ever, but it's also like really struggling to find its voice. Now, I don't know, you can tell me a little better. I've heard that season 34 has been like a big improvement compared to the last couple of years. I heard it's kind of getting better.
Yeah, the thing we've found is like the social media traction for a lot of the Simpsons is good again headlines is sort of based more around these like event or sort of like particular episodes, like where they did the Treehouse of Horror that referenced Death Note or the It parody or something like that.
So when I said that I hadn't watched the latest episodes, I'd actually I do every year watch every single Treehouse of Horror episode from every single season.
Every year, all 30 plus of them now.
Well, I try. Like sometimes I can't get a hold of all of them. But I try to watch as many as I can. And this episode reminded me some of the Treehouse of Horror social commentary. And so I feel like, well, I don't feel like it feels like a classic episode of The Simpsons. I feel like it's definitely closer to a Treehouse of Horror spin, like turn on the end episode. And I definitely think that they had a lot of fun with the Roblox animation, but it did have me miss the like traditional moving around the town situations that I really love. Like I liked when they went to the Montessori school, but I would have loved to have seen more movement outside of the game. So yeah, I think it feels like one of those types of episodes.
Well, no, that's a solid point because, yeah, like the Treehouse of Horror, like those event ones, like they did a two-parter that like parodied Fargo a little while ago, and like these ones are the sort of like headline-grabbing sort of episodes, like look at this interesting concept. And yeah, J-Ban, to use your phrase, it's like those moving around the town episodes, they're the ones that are still falling flat in the modern Simpsons era. And even then, those event episodes are like good at best. You know, they're not like, we're not back to the classic era by a long stretch, but like we do feel like there has been a bit more effort in the 30s, and there's been a bit more attention paid to, you know, having a logical story that progresses in a satisfying way. A lot of the 20s especially was just fucking batshit. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like that magnetic poetry, you know, words that you stick to your fridge or whatever. Oh, yeah. Some of those 20s Simpsons were just like, they grabbed a handful of those and just lobbed them at a big like magnet
a purple
wall.
Monkey dishwasher situation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of feeling, like obviously this is, so based around the Roblox, and Steve, you mentioned the sort of half bringing in the Wire into this, and was that what the closing credits was referencing as well?
Yes, right.
I haven't seen The Wire, so I don't know.
I am a bad TV consumer. I've only ever seen the first season of The Wire, but I think that's accurate. J-Ben, have you watched that show?
I haven't. I've been meaning to for a really long time. I sometimes have issues with watching organized crime shows. Like I've never seen The Sopranos because just there's so unlikable, like mean people, and I've heard wonderful things about The Wire, and I love Idris Elba, so I do feel like it's on my list to someday sit down and watch. But it's just like life is hard. I want a little bit of an escape when I watch my TV.
I just finished Succession recently, and oh my god, like it was a great show. I'm glad to have watched it, but fuck, it was exhausting. No one was good in that show. Everyone sucked. But yeah, so in terms of feeling like a Sims, it's sort of like, I think the characters are mostly themselves, sort of, even though the show, I think, might be letting that down a bit. Yeah,
I feel like, the characterizations were consistent. I could have done with a lot more Homer and a lot more Lisa.
100%.
Yeah, I was missing Lisa.
Yeah.
I was always a big fan of Lisa, so I was like, where's Lisa in this whole episode?
Yeah, where's our saxophone star? But yes or no, would you watch this episode again?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't think so. I think this was, maybe it's catching me on like a bad day. I don't know, but this one just didn't connect with me. It made me really kind of wistful about aging in ways that I was not really prepared to go into.
Wow, Simpsons getting Steve all existential.
It really was, like I've mentioned it in the past on the show, but like I was a day one viewer. Like I saw the very first episode when it aired back in 1989, and I'm just like, oh my God, like it has become such a different beast. Like I've grown, and like the writers have grown and their kids have grown. And it's like now it's become something I don't really recognize.
How about you, J-Ban? Would you chuck this one on again?
I wouldn't necessarily turn it on, but I wouldn't turn it off if it was playing.
Ah.
Fair.
It's not one of those episodes that makes me lose interest immediately. I still think there are like little hidden gems in it, but it definitely makes me excited to do my Treehouse of Horrors rewatch.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, might have to get you back for our Treehouse of Horror-thon, but But yeah, with these episodes, we like to also look about what we'd like to personally change about this one. We'll start with you, J-Ban, this time. What would you like to change about this episode?
I would have liked more Lisa and more Homer. I would like to have seen like a montage of Bart maybe playing different styles of video games before he settled on Roadblocks, and the challenges, like just how Bart would connect and how the family would connect with different types of video games. I think that would have been really fun. I feel like I would have like left it a little bit more uplifting. I wouldn't have included the part where they had the Ned coming in to see the decimation of the family via screen. I would have liked to have seen them around a kitchen table at the end enjoying their games together. And I also would have liked if I would have punched up the script. I would have included a lot more jokes.
Yeah, that's the one persisting thing is that, yeah, for all my positive points, it's like, yeah, it's still a comedy show and it's not that funny. How about you, Steve? What would you like to change about this one?
Yeah, I think I kind of landed in a similar place. Like, I really miss kind of the joke-a-minute structure of the earlier episodes. Like, they weren't all gold, but there were enough, like, funny jokes being thrown at the wall that were sticking around. And I just feel like there wasn't that kind of energy or dedication to this premise to really sustain it. And maybe it's just that, like, the Roblox is kind of so far beyond me. And, like, I think there is some kind of, like... There have been like scams run through Roblox where people are actually making money, like selling little horse armor to kids or whatever, like it's a fertile ground to start from. And I just wanted something a little bit more propulsive, a little bit more funny.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess I would have liked to see a bit more of Skinner getting in over his head as well with this sort of thing. And like, yeah, the complicated nature of how they're cashing out as well. Like, I did enjoy the joke about the long string of things they had to do to actually cash out the money in this game. But like, yeah, I think I would have liked to see a bit more of it, like play out and see just sort of a bit more like rather than just jokes going to the nth degree, like Bart has a Lexus now. And it's like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's somewhere between I love the crepe station and I hate the Lexus,
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I need a more satisfying ending for the Marge Maggie story. I don't know, maybe like Marge realize how profound Maggie is or something like that, or I don't know, like just some sort of ending with that story, because just the whole, oh, they're zombies looking at their screens now. It's such like a hacky observation. And yeah, in an episode where I felt, yeah, they sort of having some pretty on-point jabs at Montessori school and a bit of good-natured ribbing there. Yeah, that final point just seemed so lazy.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned the long string of things they had to do to cash the money, and I didn't even read that so much as a joke as like them telling us how these kind of scams are run.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. This is probably how you do it. Like, this is probably actually how it's done.
Yeah. For real. All right. Now, let's get into our final notes before we rank it. J-Ban, we'll start with you. Was there any other parts from this episode that we didn't get into you'd like to mention before we move on to the rankings?
No. I do not think so.
All right. Then we'll move on to Steve.
Yeah, I think we've kind of covered a lot of my finer points here. Yeah, give me more Milhouse dealing fun dip. That's
yeah. I actually loved Milhouse in this episode, like how he ratted on Bart's whole scheme instantly, and then how he was so like not ready to take over when Skinner put him in charge. I thought that was all very funny.
Milhouse is my spirit animal, so I always need more of him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've only got a couple of more things. Yeah, we're pretty thorough with this one. Yeah, again, echoing the point, I loved the opening thing with the Assassin's Creed VR game, but it was very weird to see like Bart swearing and then like them blurring out his mouth and things like that. I was just like, don't expect that from my Simpsons. Okay. I guess he is a 10-year-old playing video games, so that's what Bart would be in 2022.
Even with the bleeps, like it is still here. It's weird to hear, yeah.
Yeah. I like that his other games were Future War 1, Death Guts, or Future War 2, Brain Carnage.
Brain Carnage is pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, where he goes to Skinner, walk with me. And then Skinner's like, all right, I have to do 9,000 more steps. I thought that was a pretty good joke. Yeah, when they're getting bombarded by the rival Roblox scammers, and yeah, again, bring it back to your spirit animal. He goes, oh no, death by unicorn. That's my second favorite magical horse.
I know, because Pegasus is first.
Okay, I was trying to access another magical horse when he said that. I'm like, oh, what the hell are there some other magical horses there? Yeah, Pegasus, you're right.
You're right, that is the best magical horse. And yeah, during the YouTube video as well, they were like, yeah, let us know your theories in the comments. And then no racist stuff, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. So it's really funny. My sketch troupe and I have started putting stuff on YouTube, and it's just always like, women aren't funny. And it's just so fucking, excuse my language, it's so hilarious because it's just like how many times men comment that women aren't funny. And it's just like, it's really hilarious.
Yeah, you keep commenting that, men. It'll be true someday. And then, yeah, my final note is, when Bart's talking Skinner down from the tractor, he's just saying, yeah, Josh Gad wasn't real. He never was. I thought that would have been a decent button for the episode, but they had to go to Zombie Simpsons on their devices. All right, it is time to rank this thing. So, on the Simpsons Index, we rank using a 6-point scale, which starts down the bottom at failure. Maybe if the episode was just meh, you give it a participant. But for positive rankings, you got okay bronze, good silver, excellent gold. But for the best of the very best, you give cubic zirconia. I will go first. Let me show you how it's done. Yeah, look, I'm going to give this one a bronze. It's, I think it could have worked its way up to a silver if it was funnier or if the story points were a bit more satisfying, but like, I give it an okay ranking. I think you put it best, J-Ban. You know, I'm not seeking it out, but I'm not necessarily turning it off if it's on. It's decent enough, but yeah, there are some unsatisfying elements that can't let me give it a higher score. Steve, what about you?
I think I'm going to go participant on this one because, you know, the show wasn't setting out to send me into an existential spiral. It just kind of happened that way. So I'm not going to hold that against it. But I do feel like there's just a lot of missed opportunities here. I feel like this feels very first draft to me. And it needed just another pass to breathe a little life into it.
J-Ban, please finish it off.
I'm going to be a little cheeky, and I'm going to say diet bronze. So a bronze light, if you will, because I do think it's like it was an enjoyable watch. A couple of jokes hit. Like I really loved the visual gag of the strawberries or Nutella crepe station. I did feel like some of the visual gags hit. So yeah, I think it's a bronze.
All right, yeah. So averaging out, that'll equal a dull bronze, which does sort of translate to diet bronze, doesn't it? Yeah, so sort of pretty par for the course for season 34. Yeah, most of those episodes are sort of hovering around that. Yeah, if you're looking for the update. But yeah, when we're talking about the show getting improvement, it's going from the dull participants and failure overall rankings to, it's achieving bronze status now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, that about does it for the Simpsons Index. J-Ban, Steve, thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. And where can people hear more of you if they want to do that?
Yeah, well, we have a podcast with our friend Justin Wilhelm called Cinemarcade, and that is the podcast about movies, video games, and the sparks that fly when those two worlds collide. That's how I like to phrase it. We every week we are watching a movie and then we were playing the game based on it. We're having a lot of fun digging into that. It's giving us a extremely wide variety of movies that we cover. Like we're talking everything from like, I don't know, what's the most prestigious we've watched so far? Vertigo. We've watched Vertigo, and then we've watched Balls of Fury. You know, like we're really covering the entire gamut, and then the games are usually weird and noteworthy in some way or another. So it's been a lot of fun to dig into.
Awesome.
And I have another podcast for horror movie fans out there. It's called Puppet Masters Castle Freaks, where myself and Jared Hornbeck are watching every movie in the Full Moon catalog. So if you're not familiar with them, they do very low-budget, cheesy horror movies from throughout the 90s to today. Stuff like Puppet Master and Demonic Toys and Castle Freak, movies like that. So we're covering a lot of those.
Awesome. J-Ban, do you have anything else to plug?
So my sketch group is Pigeon Physics, and it's on TikTok. And we're not good yet, but we're not bad. So we're good bronze. We're bronzy at the moment.
I'm disputing that. I think Pigeon Physics is very funny.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Well, actually, J-Ban, I almost forgot. We do have another question on the Simpsons Index. Steve has answered it in the past before, but so we're building a sandwich board here on the Simpsons Index from all our guests, and we want to know, what is your favorite sandwich? You know, we're walking into the Simpsons Index deli. I'm going to order the J-Ban. What's on it?
Is this related? Is this a real sandwich? Or talking about what episode of The Simpsons I like the most?
No, this is a non-Simpsons, purely sandwich question.
I love a pastrami on rye, like fresh pastrami. It's so good.
Damn, succinct. You know what you want. Yeah, usually it's a lot more people humming and hoeing and going, ooh, what defines me as a sandwich? And yeah, you're right on it.
You got it.
Have you had a good pastrami sandwich in a while? It's pretty delicious.
It hits.
Yeah, I mean, it's heading into lunchtime now. I think I'm, going to go hit up the deli, actually. But yeah, until then, thanks everyone for listening. As you know, I'm also doing G'day EW with Dando from the Four Finger Discount podcast, but also over here we have a Patreon. That's patreon.com/SideQuestStudios, where you get a bonus podcast every week. And one of the Patreon perks is you get to suggest movies for us to review on our podcast starring Springfield, where we review movies that star the cast of The Simpsons. So yeah, you two big cinephiles, do you have any favorite movies that star a Simpsons cast member?
Oh, I mean, obviously Maximum Overdrive starring Yardley Smith.
It was our second episode we did.
Easily the best, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of Yardley Smith, another movie we already reviewed, Toys, you guys reviewed as well.
That's right. She does have a little bit in there. Yeah, she does.
Yeah. My notes from that is she's like an amazing actor because somehow she is like staying stone-faced next to a very charismatic Robin Williams.
Yeah. She's in the scene where they're like evaluating the different fake vomits, right? I believe that's right.
That's right. What a baffling fucking weird-ass movie.
So weird. So weird.
But yeah, go check that out over at patreon.com/SideQuestStudios. But until then, thank you guys once again for joining us. Thank you, J-Ban.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Steve.
Thanks so much.
All right, and I've been Elliot Jay O'Neill, and that's all the mustard in the house.
Thank you for listening to the Simpsons Index podcast, which is also an online spreadsheet available at thesimpsonsindex.com. You can also check out our other shows, like Pulp Fury Radio, our scripted fiction podcast, which tells all original stories across a range of pulp genres, and Thrones of Game, where we review Game of Thrones in reverse order. Links to those podcasts and more will be available in the show notes. Now, there's no bonus scenes for this episode, so we'll catch you next week.